The Lincoln Project recently put out a video that outlines what a second Trump term might look like. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's pretty terrifying. And these aren't just crazy ideas that they're getting from just anyone. They're pulling these ideas directly from Donald Trump himself. These are things that he's said before, things that he brags about at his rallies. These are things that Trump definitely wants to do if he were to win in November. So let's go ahead and take a look at what an actual second Trump term might look like. I'm going to go ahead and watch this video all the way through and comment along the way. So let's go ahead and kick things off.
November 5th, 2024. Donald Trump defeats a divided and dispirited Democratic campaign. On January 20th, 2025, Donald Trump is sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. Unfortunately, he keeps his promises. Trump seizes control of a divided government, signing hundreds of executive orders implementing Project 2025.
Just to point this out, it is so important that Democrats keep the Senate and win back the House. Hopefully, if Trump is reelected, that will act as some sort of deterrent against some of the crazy things that he wants to do. But let's go ahead and keep moving.
Trump replaces over 50,000 civil servants with hardline MAGA loyalists. The federal oath of office now requires declaring loyalty to the president, not the Constitution.
This is not an absurd idea that they're just pulling from nowhere. Donald Trump talks about this stuff all the time. He talks about firing tens of thousands of civil servants and replacing them with people that are 100% loyal to Trump. People who complain that the guardrails held during Trump's first term are crazy because he will be putting people in place that will turn the other way or go along with some of his lunatic ideas. So it's so important that we beat these ideas back. We beat Trump in November. And if that doesn't happen, we have to hold on to the Senate and win back that House.
Protected by the Supreme Court's grant of total immunity for official acts, Donald Trump orders the Department of Justice to arrest members of the January 6th Commission, current and former DOJ employees, and political opponents for treason, election interference, and conspiracy.
This is also another crazy idea that we hear from Trump all of the time. He is constantly talking about how he wants to get retribution on his perceived enemies. He's talked about holding military tribunals for people like Liz Cheney. And he's talked about throwing January 6th committee members in jail. Let's go ahead and look at him do that here.
The presumptive Republican nominee is now openly identifying the political opponents that he believes should be facing charges. As Donald Trump fumed over a judge that he appointed, ordering his former aide, Steve Bannon, to report to prison next month, the former president fired off multiple all-caps posts on social media demanding that the members of the January 6th Congressional Committee actually be the ones who were indicted, while also falsely accusing them, and all caps now, but I'm not going to shout, deleting and destroying all of their findings.
Trump talks about this stuff all of the time. We know that he wants to put his political opponents in jail. These are un-American ideas. This is not how America is supposed to operate. He's under this false sense of reality that Democrats are already going after him in such a way, and now he's using that as justification to go after his political opponents were he to be reelected. These are un-American ideas. This is banana republic type stuff that Republicans are always whining about when they are the ones fighting to implement such a system. But let's go ahead and keep moving.
The facts are, of course.
Oops.
He declares it to be an official act. Trump ends birthright citizenship by executive order and turns millions of American-born citizens into illegal aliens overnight. Mass deportations begin. Hundreds of thousands, including legal U.S. residents and American citizens, are imprisoned in newly built camps. Protests erupt.
We have to highlight this because I don't think people really understand the gravity of what mass deportations would look like. Families would be torn apart. American citizens would be detained in these huge detention camps that start to look like concentration camps. Trump promises mass deportations all of the time. They would wreck our economy, they would be violent, and they would cause chaos throughout our whole country. This is a terrible, terrible idea that Trump talks about all of the time. Let's go ahead and watch him here.
Following the Eisenhower model, we will use all necessary state, local, federal, and military resources to carry out the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. Got it there.
And this is a staple of his rallies. He talks about deporting up to 20 million people. This would be brutal. This would be un-American. And it would tear this country apart. People, I cannot emphasize enough how devastating mass deportations would be. For the people involved being detained in large detention camps, but also for the American economy. Most people who are here illegally come here for a better life. They contribute to the American economy. They pay into federal systems that they can't take out of. Immigrants are a net benefit to our country. And it's absolutely disgusting that this is even an idea that is being proposed by Republicans and conservatives. I agree with them that we have to have border security and a way to vet asylum seekers, but mass deportations is not the route to go. It will be a violent, nasty event and a stain on the United States. But let's go ahead and keep moving.
Trump addresses the nation from the Oval Office, invoking the Insurrection Act and declaring the protesters a danger to American sovereignty. He orders the National Guard to use deadly force to suppress the protests.
This is nothing new either. Do you remember when there were peaceful protests going on in Washington, D.C., and Donald Trump deployed violence so he could take a picture with a Bible? He's constantly talking about how he wants to invoke the Insurrection Act or declare martial law. That way he can rule with an iron fist as he sees it. Nothing new. Donald Trump talks about this stuff all of the time.
In the wake of the bloody violence, Trump declares nationwide martial law, awarding himself new powers under the freshly signed American Sovereignty Protection Order, which defines protest of immigration policies as non-protected speech and a threat to national security.
Can you imagine having a Republican president declaring that certain types of protests are against the First Amendment? Aren't these the people who whine about First Amendment protections all of the time? These guys are not serious. I could totally see Trump trying to carry something like this out in the name of national security or whatever.
Governors in New York, California, Illinois, and elsewhere declare their opposition, promising to refuse compliance in their states. Trump orders their arrests. Trump pardons every January 6th attacker, including those who assaulted the police, and in a White House ceremony issues a new presidential medal honoring them.
Again, we hear this from Trump all the time as well. He refers to January 6th rioters as hostages. So you're telling me that we have a Republican president who wants to pardon the people who tried to overthrow a free and fair election in 2020. You can't even make this stuff up. This is insane. Let's go ahead and keep moving.
Many are given jobs in his administration. The Department of Education is renamed the Department of American Values and mandates a nationwide Christian nationalist curriculum for all schools receiving federal aid.
This is another idea that Trump talks about very often. He wants to eliminate the Department of Education. Let's go ahead and see him talk about that here.
And I will shut down the federal Department of Education, and we will move everything back to the states where it belongs and where they can individualize education and do it with the love for their children.
This is another idea, like I said, that he talks about often. This whole grievance narrative spread so far and wide that somehow vaccine mandates for our schools is now politicized. That teaching age-appropriate sex education is somehow bad in the eyes of these religious zealots. So we just need to eliminate the Department of Education altogether? What type of sense does that make? These are radical, extreme ideas, and we need to fight these ideas every single day and make sure that we are doing the work to beat them back at the ballot box. Let's go ahead and keep moving.
Trump, joined by Speaker Mike Johnson and evangelical leaders, announces that the Department of Health and Human Services has reclassified mifepristone, making it illegal to distribute or prescribe, as well as new HHS regulations that make IVF treatments impossible to legally administer. Trump.
I shouldn't have to point this out, especially since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. What a devastating mess it has been to get reproductive health care in many states across this country. We've already seen lawsuits trying to challenge the efficacy or the safeness of mifepristone and other similar drugs. It is not beyond imagination that they are going to keep at this issue. In fact, we know this to be the case. These religious zealots believe that life starts at conception. And we see legislation and lawsuits popping up all over the country trying to establish fetal personhood. And that is definitely something that we can expect in a second Trump term. Let's go ahead and keep going.
Reverses one campaign promise by declaring a national abortion ban by executive order. Challenges to his authority are rejected by the Supreme Court, which has seen new appointments from Trump after it was expanded to 12 justices.
So this was a pretty novel idea to me. I don't think I've ever heard Trump talk about expanding the court, but I definitely do not put it past him. We've already seen the devastating consequences of him being able to select another 3 justices to the court. So if he were able to expand the court and appoint another 3, that could be absolutely devastating for America.
He signs an executive order removing abortion records from HIPAA privacy regulations and announces a new federal data sharing program so states can monitor women's periods.
Imagine how terrifying that is. Removing periods and things of that nature from HIPAA laws so they can track women. This is Handmaid's Tale stuff. What are they thinking? Say it again. We have to beat these ideas back at the ballot box. It is so important that we put in the work to make sure these extreme ideas do not win in November.
Thousands are detained while crossing state lines under suspicion of seeking an abortion. Trump's acting Secretary of Defense, a disgraced ex-general, fires over 400 generals and admirals, leaving the military leaderless. Other Trump appointees purge the ranks of the CIA, FBI, and Department of Justice.
Again, this is not a far-fetched idea either. Places like Project 2025 are vetting candidates so Trump can appoint them where they need them. We do not want loyalists to Trump running our government. This is antithetical to what our founders envisioned this country to be. We want federal and civil servants to be loyal to our Constitution and upholding those values. Imagine how devastating it could be to have a whole bunch of federal employees that are now willing to go along with all of these crazy Donald Trump plans, or just look the other way when he carries out violence during his mass deportations. This is absolutely terrifying stuff, and it is un-American. But let's go ahead and keep moving.
By executive order, Trump withdraws the United States from NATO and ends Pentagon cooperation with Ukraine. Russian tanks enter Kyiv. Vladimir Zelensky is killed. It is announced that Trump will run for a third term, claiming he was unfairly cheated in the 2020 election.
Again, we've heard this from Trump as well. Whether he's joking about a third term, or what I believe is he is very serious about a third term. He is a malignant narcissist who is thirsty for power. Why would I believe that he wouldn't try to seek a third term? Let's go ahead and watch him speak about that here.
And 51 days from now, we're going to win Nevada, and we're going to win 4 more years in the White House. And after we win 4 more years, we'll ask for maybe another 4 or so.
Absolutely terrifying. Again, these are un-American ideas. It is absolutely insane to me that we have a potential next president who has such radical ideas, that is so antithetical to our founders and the founding documents and our Constitution, all while screaming that they're for the Constitution and they're the true patriots. This is disgusting stuff. But let's go ahead and finish this ad. There's just a few seconds left here.
His Supreme Court ultimately agrees with this interpretation, paving the way for Trump's 2028 re-election. If you hear all this and believe it isn't possible, then ask yourself, what did you believe was impossible just 8 years ago? This isn't a fantasy. It's Trump's plan, and he's counting on you to believe it couldn't happen.
I think that was the perfect question to end this video with. What did you think was impossible only 8 years ago? We now have a Republican candidate who has been found liable for sexual assault for the rape of E. Jean Carroll. He's been convicted of 34 felonies for defrauding the people of New York. And more importantly, it's a Republican candidate that tried to overthrow the 2020 election, who tried to carry out a fake electors scheme to try to flip votes in key states. This is un-American. This is a guy who riled up his supporters to march on the Capitol and deploy violence to try to stop the certification of a free and fair election. How is it possible that this is the guy on the other side of the ticket? How is it possible that Republicans and conservatives are just looking the other way to all of Donald Trump's faults? Donald Trump is an un-American, malignant narcissist who is thirsty for power. And I think he will do whatever it takes to get that power and deploy that power. These are scary times we are living in. It's quite crazy to me that we have some conservatives now saying they would rather have dictator Trump versus Biden for another 4 years. That is un-American. That is antithetical to everything the United States is supposed to be. So we have to make sure that we are getting out there, we are doing the work. Whoever the candidate may be on the Democratic side, it's not going to be a perfect candidate. But we know one thing for sure, is that Donald Trump cannot be reelected. It will be an absolutely devastating shift to the way we do governance here in the United States. So we have to make sure we're out there beating these ideas back at the ballot box, because a second Trump term would be absolutely devastating. So that's going to do it for me on this one, folks. If you got anything out of this video, if you could remember to smash that like button and hit subscribe, maybe share it with a friend or two, I'd very much appreciate that. If you think I got something wrong, or if you disagree with me about something, feel free to drop a comment below. And if you want to learn about the insane amount of criminal activity within Trump's inner circle, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. And I will see you guys on the next one.